Let me tell you a little bit right now about what a traditional path to achieving FIPS 140 validation looks like. So if you're a organization and you are using again some cryptography in your product, which again most likely you do because cryptographic controls is really the plumbing of kind of the digital privacy and trust these days. It's all kind of relies on cryptography, whether you're talking about, zero trust or you're talking about, MFA or, it's all underneath, cryptography has to work. So cryptography is there, it's fundamental. And if you have cryptography in your product, you have to essentially, get it FIPS validated if you want to be able to sell to the public sector, right? And of course, if you're an agency, if you're using products, right, you know this, but you need to make sure the products you're using are, have cryptography that's been FIPS 140 validated. So a traditional journey for a vendor who is trying to achieve FIPS 140 validation would be something like this. They would have to hire a consultant who specializes in FIPS because very few people, live in this world and understand sort of all the requirements, and there's a lot of requirements to FIPS. They would have to then go and design and implement and document their module, working with that consultant. That would take some number of months. Then they would have to go and work. There's about a dozen labs across the US and Canada that have been accredited by NIST to do testing for FIPS. So they would have to work with the lab for 3 to 6 months, sometimes more. As part of that effort, you would get additional documentation done. You would work with a process called a CAVP. It's algorithm verification program, cryptographic algorithm validation program. That's a prerequisite to the full validation to really all the algorithms that you have in your module would have to be taken through this process to make sure that they perform as expected and proper outputs and all of that. Eventually, when you're ready, you would make a submission to NIST themselves into the CMVP, which is Cryptographic Module Validation Program. The first thing would happen there, you would go to what's called the queue, because there's a queue. You would be in a review pending status initially. Right now, if you sort of get in that queue, once you get into the queue for you to go to actually point where NIST starts to review your module, then there's going to be a lot of back and forth, depending how good your submission is, questions, you may have to make changes and so forth. Right now, from the point of like, once you get in the NIST queue, you're talking about 2+ years right now because of how backed up NIST is at the moment. They're working hard right now to add automation and do things, but the reality is a lot of it is still manual process. They are short-staffed right now, especially in the current environment. There's a hiring freeze. They can't get new people at the moment. So there's all sorts of things that are happening that make it challenging. So there's effort to reduce that queue, but right now the queue can still be in, just if you look at historically the last 12, 24 months, it's like 2+ years, right, to kind of go through the queue, and to add to that, you have to add your time for working with consultants, working with labs, and all of that. And of course, if you have any deficiencies in your submission, you could theoretically be there for quite a long time. So, and extensive testing has to be done for all the operating environments you want to claim in your certificate and so forth. So the program, the traditional process is time consuming. It can be frustrating. It can be costly. A lot of opportunity cost, because ultimately, I would imagine, you want to be developing your features and functions versus doing cryptography stuff, and obviously until the process is complete, you're kind of locked out from the federal opportunities to be able to sell your product if you are a software vendor, right, or a hardware vendor that has some sort of firmware that uses cryptography. So this is kind of the traditional process, and if you haven't started it yet, there's just not enough time before you get to FIPS 140-3, that FIPS 140-2 expires, which we'll talk about in a second.